Hello and welcome to this yet another edition of The Print Live. And the question that we are answering today is whether has Indian Army avenged the Pulwama with its latest operation? I'm Snesh Alex Philip and the answer to this question is no. No, the Indian Army has not avenged the gruesome attack of Thursday in which 40 CRPF personnel were killed after a local terrorist rammed his car in what is known as the first suicide car bombing attack in over 2 decades. Yes, there was an operation that was held, that was carried out earlier in the day today, in which 4 army soldiers lost their lives, including an army major, and 2 dreaded terrorists were killed. One of the terrorists who was killed has been identified as Kamran, the top Jaish-e-Mohammad commander in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, who is Kamran? Kamran is an Afghan war veteran who had managed to sneak into the country in December last year and was known to be operating in South Kashmir area, especially in Pulwama, where though he was a suspect in the IED blast, top sources in the security establishment tell us that he is not the mastermind of the attack. But yes, he was a person of interest. Multiple teams were formed immediately after the blast and multiple raids were carried out across South Kashmir. Following a specific tip-off, yesterday about 12:30 in the morning, that is today early morning, a CASO was launched. CASO is a cordon and search operation. At around 1 o'clock, when the cordon was being laid, the QRT, that is a quick reaction team headed by a major, came under attack from the terrorist. The soldiers fired back, but in this initial burst of fire, 4 of our soldiers lost their lives and 1 was seriously injured. He was evacuated, he was operated upon at the military hospital in Srinagar, and he is now out of danger. So, keep sending in your questions and we'll try and answer every single question about this operation. I've got a question coming in from Rahul, who is asking the same thing that I asked, is whether this encounter is the revenge that the Indian Army was looking for. No, this is not the retribution that the Indian Army was looking for. Yes, he was a man who was wanted in connection with this particular attack. He was not the mastermind. Trust me when I say that retribution will indeed come from the Indian Army, but the place and time would be of our own choosing. So, what I would say is, everybody is wanting for a revenge, everybody is wanting for a retribution. I think the army, the military should be given the time and space for them to decide when to strike back. I've got a question coming in from Shiv asking, when will the attacks be launched? Well, that is a million dollar question, and even if I knew the answer, I would still not tell you the answer, because this is an operation that has been planned and will be carried out by the military. Remember that there needs to be an element of surprise. Immediately after the Uri attack in 2016, the Indian Army had launched after 11 days a surgical strike, wherein which multiple teams, from the special forces, that is the 4 and the 9 para of the Indian Army, went inside POK and carried out an operation targeting the terror launch pads. Remember that the Pakistani army along with the terrorists were taken by surprise. They were not expecting this. But however, after this Pulwama attack, as per the chatter that have been picked up, the Pakistan army is completely on alert. Leaves have been cancelled out. Multiple ceasefire violations have already started taking place. So this is a time when the Pakistan army is expecting India to strike back, and hence this is not the time to strike back. So yes, we will be waiting and we'll decide on our own the time and place of our choosing, as I mentioned earlier. I have a question coming in from Colonel Naveen. He's a retired Indian Army officer, and he is asking what are the military operations that we have at hand. Well, to be frank, there are multiple military operations that are on the drawing table as far as retribution to this Pulwama attack is concerned. Remember that the military option not necessarily would be an army operation. The military consists of both the Navy as well as the Air Force. So while everybody is focusing on what the army might do, whether the army might do a 2006 retake of the second edition of the 2016 surgical strike or not, but remember that you also have the Air Force, which is capable of carrying out surgical strikes, as well as the Navy that could be used to put additional pressure. For example, one has often spoken about the fact that the Navy could actually go ahead and block Karachi. Now this is just one of the possibilities I'm talking about, not necessarily that this is what will be exercised, because then remember that if the Navy gets in the action, then the whole dynamic changes completely. There are multiple global powers that would be involved in this, because you're stopping the supply and the reach to the Karachi port. So you have various other players that will come into play, including that of China. Whereas the Air Force, as far as the Air Force is concerned, remember that we have multiple missiles and bombs that can be used, wherein which we don't have to, for targeted precision attacks of terror launch pads or any installation anywhere in Pakistan, we necessarily don't have to cross our area, that is our area of influence. We can stay well within the Indian airspace and launch attacks on targets across the line of control, or for that matter, the IB. But yes, there are multiple options that have been considered, and the best is for the forces to decide, for the political leaders to decide what action needs to be taken. But remember that every single action will also have to be prepared for a possible blowback. When 2016 surgical strike was carried out, not many would know that the Indian Navy as well as the Indian Air Force were completely put on high alert. You had pilots ready with a fighter aircraft in case they have to scramble at the shortest notice possible, in case the Pakistan decided to reciprocate in a larger manner. So yes, there are a lot of calculations that take into place before a strike is actually launched. Well, one Vishal Sonawane is asking, can you tell us what options Indian Army has to destroy Pakistan? As I said, first of all, it's not about destruction of Pakistan is concerned. Our main target, the enemy that we have is the Pakistan Army, not Pakistan as a country as such. We don't have any kind of action that is being planned against the civilians in Pakistan. But yes, there are multiple options that are being considered and which would be played out in the next few days. One will have to just wait and watch, give the army, give the military its benefit of doubt, let them plan it out, rather than us sitting here, in our offices, on our keyboards, in our AC rooms, in our bedrooms, and thinking of a revenge attack. Let the forces handle it, and I'm sure that is something that they are working it out on. I have a question from Arun, who is asking, why do we lose so many military men during encounters compared to terrorist lives lost during encounter? As I mentioned earlier in the day, earlier in this particular live, in which I had mentioned that the 4 officers, the 4 army personnel, including the army major, were killed. They were part of the QRT, and while the cordon was being launched, there was a sudden gunfire from the terrorist, and in the initial burst of fire, we lost 4 of our soldiers. Whatever be the case, I completely agree with you. I'm of the firm view that every life lost is a setback to our military establishment. But we are in a situation of war. We are in a situation of proxy war that has been launched by the Pakistani establishment against the country. And whenever an operation is carried out, no matter how much we don't want it to be, but we got to be ready to take in the casualties, because sadly, that is the fact of these military operations, that lives are at stake. People will end up losing lives. But yes, I do agree that the entire focus should be to have minimum casualties on our front. The former the Northern Army Commander Chief Lieutenant General Panak has tweeted and questioned this particular issue of why we lose our men. Do we need better bulletproof jackets? Do we need better vehicles, bulletproof vehicles? There are a number of things that need to be done to ensure that the lives are not lost, because every single life matters. I've got a question from Javed Asad, who's asking, internal players, especially the NSA, has to answer a lot of questions on handling of security, when that will happen and how the responsibilities will be fixed. Well, I completely agree with you, Asad, that responsibilities need to be fixed. Whenever an attack of such a huge magnitude happens, be it Uri, be it Pathankot, or be it this Pulwama attack, responsibility needs to be fixed. People should be held accountable for this. And sadly, that's not been the case. I'll draw you back to the Mumbai terror attacks, the 26/11, in which we lost so many of our Indians, of fellow citizens, as well as foreign citizens. But what action was taken since then? Was the then IB chief sacked? Was then the RAW chief sacked? Was then NSA chief sacked? The Navy chief, or for that matter, the Coast Guard chief? Was any action taken against any of them? The answer is no. And that is what really ails our Indian system. I think accountability needs to be fixed. People should be made accountable for the lives lost, for every single lives lost. And here in this case also, while yes, I compliment the intelligence and the security establishment in Jammu and Kashmir for ensuring that no big attack has taken place in the state in the last one year and a half. The last major attack that took place was again in Pulwama, in which a CRPF camp was attacked, in which we lost 5 of our brave men. But yes, since then they have managed to prevent any such future attacks. But this attack is a classic example of intelligence and security failure, and there are no two words about it. People heading the security establishment in the state as well as the center need to answer. Now, another question that has been asked by Mohit Agarwal is Kamran the person who trained the local terrorist how to use IEDs? Now, as I said earlier in this particular live, that Kamran was a person of interest as far as the Pulwama attack was concerned. Remember that it was ThePrint way back in January 3rd when we came out with a report quoting highly placed intelligence sources and sources as saying that an Afghan war veteran and an IED expert has managed to infiltrate into Jammu and Kashmir on December 9th and is now operating in Pulwama. Now remember that Pulwama is the same place where this IED blast took place. Now, after this IED blast, the forces had, a number of chatter was picked up. The forces kept a track of various number of suspects, and during this particular thing, they've realized that there is this person called Kamran, as is known locally, and he is an Afghan war veteran. So he, along with another suspect who has still not been identified, has emerged as the key players that the security forces were looking for as far as this Pulwama attack is concerned. In this encounter today in Pulwama, while the good news is that Kamran, along with another Jaish-e-Mohammad terrorist, has been shot dead by the security forces. The sad news, and which pains all of us, is the fact that 4 soldiers, including an army major, lost his life. But I've been speaking to the top sources in the security establishment, and they continue to tell me that Kamran is not the mastermind of the Pulwama attack. The mastermind is still out there, and the security establishment will do everything possible to ensure that the mastermind is hunted down and brought to justice. I have a question from Rahul. He is asking, if Kamran is not the mastermind, then who is the mastermind? Well, that's a question that the security establishment would answer when the time comes. Remember, I can understand that we all want answers to a lot of questions. Even I want to know who was the mastermind, how did this happen, what were the security lapses that took place, how did, at ThePrint, I had done this story too on the day that the attack took place, in which I had raised some question marks that were, that raises because of this attack, and one of those was how is that there was no intelligence, or the security did not pick up any such movement of large amount of explosives that was used, or the kind of planning. Remember that this attack would have taken at least weeks to plan, if not months. So yes, we would want to know who is the real mastermind. I think the security forces, along with the intelligence agencies, are working on it, and I'm sure that the mastermind will be brought to justice. But remember, whoever be the local mastermind, whoever be the person who perpetrated this particular act on the ground, remember that this is an attack that has been claimed by Jaish-e-Mohammad. Now, what is Jaish-e-Mohammad? Jaish-e-Mohammad is a terror outfit that was created in 2000 after by the founder and his chief, Maulana MasoodAzhar. Now, Maulana MasoodAzhar is the person who is the actual mastermind of this attack. Maulana MasoodAzhar continues to be based in Bahawalpur. Over 2 years back, we had received intelligence that he is not feeling good. He has certain kidney issues, and he was treated, where? At military hospitals in Pakistan, and he is under the support and care of none other than the ISI. So yes, while the perpetrators on the ground will be brought to justice, I think what the bigger question is whether the actual masterminds of this entire operation, that is Maulana MasoodAzhar and his younger brother who is looking after the operations in Jammu and Kashmir, will be brought to justice or not. A question has been asked by Vineet Agarwal: is government accepting that there was an intelligence failure? Well, people within the intelligence establishment do accept that it is a failure, and I think whoever says that this is not an intelligence failure is only lying to himself. The fact of the matter is that an attack of such a huge magnitude took place. There was no information about any kind of a suicide bomber who was being trained. There was no information about such a large amount of explosives that was transported, maybe from outside Kashmir or within Kashmir. The fact that no such intelligence was there really points to an intelligence failure, and there is no doubt about it. I've got another question saying that why government backed out from putting pressure on China to ban Azhar earlier. Well, the government has not really backed down on putting pressure on China. Remember that we had the Doklam standoff. Since then, both the countries have spoken to each other. Getting Azhar, getting Masood, proclaimed as a globally recognized terrorist as per the UNSC is something that India has been working on. India has attempted this thrice in the past, but China has blocked its attempts every time. I think every time that we have spoken to the Chinese, at the official level, we've also raised this particular point. But remember that China continues to back Pakistan. There are huge billions and billions of dollars worth of investment that has taken place in Pakistan by China. So China sees the Pakistan Army and the Pakistan establishment, that is the ISI, as a short way of keeping its investments safe. So yes, China is currently backing Pakistan, and this is something that we'll have to really work on. But the good point is that there are countries like the US, Iran, and others, 48 other countries who have come out in support of India against this terrorism which is being exported, financed, and supported by Pakistan. I've got a question from Arun, who's asking, are we planning to attack Pakistan borders jointly with Iran? It is possible because even they face similar situations like Pulwama by Pak terrorists. Now, I think every single, I'm not sure whether, you will have multiple countries coming together to attack Pakistan or anything of that sort, because we are not going in for a war at this particular moment. But yes, there would be retribution. One will have to wait and see how Pakistan really responds to the whatever military action that India takes. But remember that, you mentioned this Iran part is very important, because remember that Pakistan, shares borders with India, with Afghanistan, as well as with Iran. And all the three countries have repeatedly in the past and even now accused Pakistan of fomenting terror on their soil. Now, be it Iran, be it Afghanistan, or be it India, all the three countries have been victims of this terror agenda of Pakistan, which many call it as the non-state actors, but here I would like to call it as the state actors of Pakistan, because they are nothing. These LET, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, and all other terror groups operating from Pakistani soil are nothing but an extension of the Pakistani state itself. Well, this is the last question that has come in from Spandan Nanda. Will there be a surgical strike? As I said, yes, there would be military retribution to this particular attack that claimed the lives of 40 CRPF personal. Well, also remember that, when you say, well, will there be a surgical strike? Surgical strike does not mean what happened in 2016 alone. Surgical strike does not mean our soldiers crossing into LOC and carrying out a ground attack. There are a number of other different forms of surgical strikes that can be carried out. And, trust me when I say I've spoken to the senior officials in the Indian security as well as military establishment, and they're of the view that yes, there would be a military retribution, but as I said, the time and place would be of our own choosing. Thank you so much for logging into this Print Live. I hope I was able to satisfy all your questions. Do log in tomorrow again around the same time when another colleague of mine would be talking about the news of the day. Thank you so much.